The grand hall buzzed with life, the hunters feasting and laughing, their voices echoing off the stone walls. The air was filled with the scent of roasted meat and the warmth of camaraderie. Cabo sat at the head of the long table, his eyes scanning the room. He wasn't listening to Titus, who was rambling beside him about supply routes or battle plans. Cabo's mind was elsewhere, on her, Naomi. All day, she had been in his thoughts. Her bold proposal, her confidence, the way she had stood so close to him. Her breath warm against his skin. He had agreed to her terms, but now she was avoiding him. He needed to see her, to set his eyes on her, to understand what she was playing at. And then, she walked in. It was as if the room itself held its breath. Naomi moved like a shadow, graceful and deliberate, her presence commanding attention without her saying a word. She wore a dress that hugged her frame, her hair cascading in loose waves over her shoulders. Cabo's senses sharpened, his focus narrowing to her every movement. She glided from one group of hunters to another, exchanging smiles and greetings, but she never once glanced in his direction. Cabo's jaw tightened. He had expected her to come to him, to acknowledge him, but she didn't. Instead, she kept her back to him, her laughter ringing out like a melody he couldn't reach. The night dragged on, and Cabo's frustration grew. He wasn't used to being ignored. He was the leader of the hunters, for goodness sake. You are watching the Tales of the Savannah. Subscribe and be part of the tribe. Now let's get back to the story. Titus nudged him, pulling him out of his thoughts. You've been quiet all night, my friend. What's eating at you? Cabo didn't answer at first. His eyes were still fixed on Naomi, who was now leaning against a pillar, her arms crossed as she listened to a hunter's story. Titus followed his gaze and chuckled. Ah, Titus said, a knowing grin spreading across his face. I see now. Naomi's got you tangled, hasn't she? Cabo frowned. She came to me this morning with a proposal. Now she acts as if I don't exist. What game is she playing? Titus leaned back, folding his arms. It's simple, my friend. She made the first move. Now she's waiting for you to make yours. Cabo's brow furrowed. What are you talking about? She wants to be chased, Titus said, his tone matter of fact. She put the ball in your court. Now it's your turn to play. Cabo sat back, his mind racing. A chase? A hunt? The idea stirred something primal in him, a thrill he hadn't felt in years. He looked at Naomi again, her silhouette framed by the firelight. She was breathtaking, yes, but it was more than that. She was a challenge, a puzzle he was determined to solve. A slow smile spread across his face. If she wanted a game, he would give her one. He stood, his movements deliberate, his confidence radiating as he crossed the room. The hunters parted as he approached, their conversations fading into whispers. Naomi was still by the pillar, her back to him, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers tightened around her cup. She knew he was coming. Good evening, hunters, Cabo said, his deep voice cutting through the noise. He nodded to the group gathered around Naomi, his eyes never leaving her. Naomi, may I have a word? She turned, her expression calm, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise. She hadn't expected him to be so direct. The hunters exchanged curious glances, but no one dared to question their leader. Of course, Naomi said, her voice steady. She set her cup down and followed him to a quieter corner of the hall, the weight of everyone's eyes on their backs. When they were out of earshot, Cabo turned to face her. The firelight danced across her features, highlighting the sharp angles of her face, the curve of her lips. She was even more beautiful up close, and it took all his willpower not to reach out and touch her. You've been avoiding me, he said, his voice low but firm. Naomi raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on her lips. Avoiding you? I didn't realize I was so important to you, Cabo. He stepped closer, his presence towering over her. You know exactly what you're doing, he said, his tone edged with frustration and something else, something hotter, more dangerous. You came to me with a proposal. I accepted, and now you act as if nothing happened. Naomi tilted her head, her smile widening. Perhaps I wanted to see if you were serious. If you truly wanted this partnership. Cabo's eyes narrowed. And what have you decided? She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. Her scent, something warm and intoxicating, filled his senses. I'm still deciding, she said, her voice a whisper. But I must admit, you've caught my attention. Cabo's breath hitched. The tension between them was electric, a current that threatened to pull them both under. He wanted to kiss her, to claim her, to end this game right here and now. But he held back, his pride and curiosity getting the better of him. Then let me make one thing clear, he said, his voice rough with restraint. I don't play games, Naomi. If this is what you want, you'll have to meet me halfway. She smiled, a slow, seductive curve of her lips. Oh, Cabo, she said, her voice dripping with challenge. Where's the fun in that? Before he could respond, she turned and walked away, her hips swaying with every step. Cabo watched her go, his heart pounding in his chest. She was infuriating, intoxicating, and utterly irresistible. And he was done playing her game. The hunt was on. The snake people moved like shadows through the corridors. The attack on Eli had left them shaken. A single hunter had slipped past their defenses, striking at the heart of their sanctuary. If one could do it, how many more could follow? They had failed their leader, and failure was a luxury they could not afford. Deep within the fortress, Eli lay still on his bed, his chest rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. The sickness had taken its toll, leaving him pale and weak. But he was alive, and for now that was enough. By his side, David sat beside him, his eyes fixed on Eli's face. He hadn't moved in hours. He wouldn't. Not after everything they'd been through. Too many lives had been lost. Too much blood spilled. David clenched his fists. He would not lose Eli. Not now. Not ever. The door creaked open, and Hannah stepped inside. Her eyes softened as they fell on David. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Dark circles framed his eyes, and his shoulders slumped with exhaustion. She approached him quietly, her voice gentle but firm. "David," she said, "let me take care of him. You need to rest." David shook his head, his gaze never leaving Eli. "I can't. What if something happens? What if they come back?" Hannah placed a hand on his arm. "You're no good to him like this. You need to sleep, eat, regain your strength. We've posted guards everywhere. He's safe, David." As David hesitated, his body betraying him as a wave of fatigue washed over him. His eyes felt like lead, and his legs threatened to buckle beneath him. Hannah was right. He couldn't protect Eli if he couldn't even stand. Reluctantly, he nodded. "Only for today," he muttered. Hannah smiled, though her eyes were sad. "Only for today," she nodded. With one last glance at Eli, David turned and left the room, his footsteps heavy with exhaustion. Hannah watched him go, her heart aching for the young man who carried so much on his shoulders. She turned back to Eli, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "We'll make sure of it." Outside, Gideon barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos like a whip. Workers scrambled to carry out his commands, their movements frantic but precise. The plan was clear. A wall would rise around the castle and around the city, a towering barrier of stone and iron. It would be impenetrable, a fortress within a fortress. No hunter would ever breach their defenses again. The sound of hammers and chisels echoed through the air as the first stones were laid. The wall would be tall enough to block the view from the forest, obscuring their movements and hiding their numbers. No outsider would know where their guards stood, where their weaknesses lay. Gideon watched the progress with grim satisfaction. When the hunters returned, they would find a fortress ready for war. At her desk, Hannah worked tirelessly, her pen scratching across paper as she wrote letter after letter. Her hand moved swiftly, but her heart was heavy. Each message was a call to arms, a plea for help. Mambo, their fallen leader, had been a visionary. He had spread the snake blood across the continent, creating a network of snake people in every corner of the world. Now it was time to call them home. Hannah paused, her pen hovering above the paper. Her eyes filled with tears as she thought of Mambo. "Thank you, brother," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You gave us this chance. We won't waste it." She dipped her pen in ink and continued writing, her words urgent and unwavering. "Come and fight with us," she wrote. "The time has come to stand together. The hunters will not stop until we are all gone. But we will not go quietly. We will fight. We will survive. We will win." As she sealed the last letter, a sense of determination settled over her. The storm was coming, and they would face it together. The snake people would not fall, not while she still drew breath. Sire stood tall in front of his team, his face serious. He looked each hunter in the eye, his voice steady but firm. "Our mission is clear," he said. "We patrol the forest. We find the snake people, and we stop them before they reach Snake Island. No exceptions." The hunters nodded. They understood the stakes. The snake people were dangerous, and if they made it to the island, it would mean disaster for everyone. Sia watched as they began to move out, their movements sharp and purposeful. But his eyes lingered on Tendai, who was grinning from ear to ear. The boy couldn't take his eyes off Malaika. She was walking ahead, her steps light and confident. Tendai trailed behind her, his heart racing. He had always known Malaika, but now she was all he could think about. He didn't understand why she was avoiding him, why she barely spoke to him anymore. It hurt, but he was determined to fix it. Malaika approached Sia, her voice breaking the silence. "Sia," she said, her tone respectful but warm. "Thank you for letting me join your team. This means a lot to me. I won't let you down." Sia smiled. "I'm sure you won't," he said. They exchanged a brief nod before Malaika fell back into step with the others. Tendai watched her, his chest tightening. He wanted to talk to her, to ask her about the weather or something, but he didn't know how. Every time he tried, she gave him short, clipped answers. It was like a wall had gone up between them, and he didn't know how to break it down. The group walked for hours, the forest growing darker and denser around them. Sia called for a halt as the sun dipped below the trees. "We camp here for the night," he announced. The hunters began setting up camp, their movements quick and efficient. Sia's eyes scanned the area. He knew this place. It was close to where he had last seen Palesa, but not close enough to pick up her scent. He couldn't risk the hunters catching her scent. Not now, at least. As the fire crackled to life, the hunters gathered around, their laughter and chatter filling the night. Sia sat quietly, his thoughts drifting to the past. He remembered his early days as a hunter, surrounded by legends like Zorro, Cabo, and Nala. He hadn't realized it then, but he had been in the presence of greatness. Those were simpler times, better times. Tendai sat beside him, his eyes fixed on Malaika as she talked and laughed with the others. He leaned closer to Sia, his voice soft. "Father," he said, "she's avoiding me. How do I make her see how I feel?" Sia hesitated. He wasn't used to these kinds of conversations, but something in Tendai's voice made him pause. The boy was desperate, and Sia understood that feeling all too well. "How did you meet Mother?" Tendai asked, his voice tentative. "How did you make her notice you?" Sia's chest tightened. He rarely spoke about Palesa, especially not to Tendai. But tonight, under the stars, it felt different. He took a deep breath. "I met her in the forest," he began, his voice soft. She was singing. Her voice. It was like nothing I'd ever heard. It drew me to her. And when I saw her, I couldn't look away. She was beautiful, kind, and I fell for her instantly. Tendai's eyes widened. He had never heard his father talk like this before. "What happened?" he asked. Sia's expression darkened. "She changed," he said simply. "One day she transformed right in front of me, and I couldn't handle it." Tendai frowned, confused. "Transformed? What do you mean?" Sia shook his head, his jaw tightening. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that if you want Malaika to talk to you again, you need to be bold. Tell her how you feel. Don't wait. Don't hesitate." Sia leaned back, a smile on his lips. "I'm reminded of your grandfather, Zorro. The first day I met him, we were sitting around the fire, just like we are now. He looked straight into Nala's eyes in front of everyone and said, 'Do you remember the old days, Nala? Before all this?'" Sia chuckled. "I remember that conversation as if it were yesterday. We all felt like we were interrupting a private moment between them. Your grandfather is a legend. If you ever wanted lessons on how to pursue a woman properly, he was a master at it. He had no shame. And maybe you shouldn't have any shame either." Tendai frowned. "Wait. Are you saying I should just shout it out in front of everyone?" "No," Sia corrected. "I'm saying you should be bold. Take what you want with both hands." Tendai nodded slowly. He understood, but not really. Sia glanced at him and smirked. "Tell you what, I'll help you," he said. Then he cleared his throat. "Hunters, tomorrow is a long day. We must get some rest. Malaika and Tendai, you take the first watch," he announced. Then he assigned the rest of the hunters their shifts, making sure the rotations were balanced throughout the night. Tendai smiled and thanked his father. The forest was quiet, the only sound the soft rustle of leaves in the night breeze. Tendai's footsteps were careful but deliberate as he approached Malaika. She was standing at her post, her back to him, her silhouette sharp against the moonlight. He stopped a few feet away, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure she could hear it. "Malaika," he said, his voice low but firm. She turned, her eyes narrowing as she saw him. "Tendai, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be on the other side of the camp." "I needed to talk to you," he said, stepping closer. "You've been avoiding me. I can't take it anymore." Malaika crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "There's nothing to talk about." "Yes, there is," he insisted, his voice rising slightly. "You've been cold to me for days. What did I do? Was it because I didn't dance with you at the celebration? Because if it is, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it meant so much to you." She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "You didn't realize? Of course you didn't. You never do, Tendai. You're so wrapped up in yourself, in your training, in trying to be the perfect hunter, that you don't see anything else. You don't see me." Her words hit him like a slap. He took a step back, stunned. "What are you talking about? I see you, Malaika. You're my friend." "Friend," she repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Is that all I am to you, just a friend?" Tendai hesitated, confusion clouding his face. I don't understand. What do you want me to say?" Malaika's eyes flashed with anger, and she stepped closer to him, her voice rising. "I want you to say something real, Tendai. I want you to stop pretending like you don't know how I feel. I've been by your side for years. I've saved you a seat at every meal, paired with you on every assignment, foolishly followed you around, and you just take it all for granted. You act like I'm just there. Like I don't matter." Tendai's chest tightened, her words cutting deeper than any blade. "Malaika, that's not true. You matter to me. You've always mattered." "Then why don't you act like it?" she shot back, her voice breaking. "Why do you let other men come to you asking if they can pursue me, and you just say, 'Sure, go ahead,' like it doesn't bother you at all, like I'm nothing more than a prize to be handed out?" He suddenly remembered the young men who had come to him respectfully over the years, asking if they could pursue Malaika, and every time he had casually told them, "Sure, of course. We're just friends. I don't know why you're asking me." Now, it all made sense. Everyone could see the truth except him. He stared at her, his mind racing. He had never realized how much she had been hurting, how much she had been hiding. "Malaika, I didn't know. I thought you were just being kind. I thought we were just friends." "Friends," she repeated, her voice trembling. "Do friends look at each other the way I've looked at you? Do friends feel the way I've felt about you? I've loved you, Tendai, for years, and now I'm tired." Her words hung in the air, heavy and raw. Tendai felt like the ground had been ripped out from under him. He had been so blind, so focused on proving himself to his father and grandfather, that he had missed what was right in front of him. He had missed her. "Malaika," he said, his voice low. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't see it." "Of course you didn't," she said, her voice bitter. "And now it's too late. I can't keep waiting for you, Tendai. I can't keep hoping that one day you'll wake up and see me. I deserve more than that. I deserve someone who sees me." Tendai's heart ached, regret and longing twisting inside him. He wanted to tell her how much she meant to him, how she had always been the one constant in his life, how he couldn't imagine a future without her. But the words felt stuck in his throat. She searched his eyes again, hoping against hope that he would say something, anything, to make her feel like she wasn't crazy for loving him, to tell her that they were more than just friends, that he felt it too. But he just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, his face a mask of helplessness. "You're wasting my time," she said finally, her voice cold and bitter. "You always have." Tendai reached out his hand, desperate to close the distance between them, but she stepped back, shaking her head. "Don't," she said, her voice firm. "Don't make this harder than it already is." She looked at him for a long moment. She had finally said all she had bottled up in her heart for years, and all she had gotten from Tendai was sorry. Then she turned away, her voice soft but final. "Goodbye, Tendai." Tendai took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. He couldn't let her walk away from him. Not like this. In a rush of desperation and longing, he reached for her, his fingers wrapping gently but firmly around her wrist. Malaika gasped softly as he pulled her close, her body colliding with his, her breath hitching at their sudden nearness. His eyes searched hers, dark with emotion, his lips parting as he finally found the courage to speak. "Malaika, I—" But before the words could escape him, a voice shattered the moment. "Your watch is over. We're taking over now," a hunter announced. Malaika jolted as if waking from a dream, her body stiffening in his grasp. Embarrassment flooded her face as she quickly stepped back, lowering her gaze, ashamed to have been caught in such a vulnerable moment. The warmth of his touch still lingered on her skin, but she refused to meet his eyes. Without another word, she turned and walked off into the darkness, leaving him standing there, his heart aching, his confession still trapped on his tongue. The moment had slipped through his fingers, and he wasn't sure if he would ever get it back. Diallo moved through the village like a shadow, his steps silent, his eyes sharp. He found Kwame outside the compound, breaking wood with steady, deliberate strikes. Kwame was so focused on his task that he didn't notice Diallo's approach until he was just a few feet away. Startled, Kwame straightened, his grip tightening on the axe. "You move like a hunter," Kwame said, his voice low and wary. Diallo smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You weren't there to welcome us," he said, his tone casual but probing. "I was hoping not to see you," Kwame admitted, his eyes avoiding Diallo's. "I asked the Snake Queen to relieve me of my duties while you're here. I'm hiding." Diallo raised an eyebrow. "Hiding? Why would you do that?" Kwame sighed, his shoulders tense. "I just don't want to confront the past. That's all." Diallo nodded slowly, as if he understood, but his eyes were calculating, searching. "So, Kwame," he said, stepping closer, "hunter and snake, that's an interesting combination." Kwame didn't respond. He swung the axe again, splitting another log with a sharp crack. The sound echoed in the quiet clearing. Diallo pressed on. "I wanted to ask you about your parentage. Where do you come from?" Kwame froze, his hands tightening around the axe handle. He didn't look up. "Why does it matter to you?" he asked, his voice tight. Diallo shrugged, but his eyes were intense. "Just curious. You're unique, Kwame. A hunter who became one of them. I want to understand." Kwame hesitated, then finally said, "I'm from a small village. That's all." "A small village, huh?" Diallo repeated, his tone light but his eyes sharp. "And your mother? Is she still there?" Kwame's jaw tightened. "No," he said quietly. "She didn't survive the war. Neither did my siblings or my father." Diallo's expression softened, but only for a moment. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said. And your siblings, were they like you? Hunters? Kwame shook his head. No, they weren't like me. We didn't share the same father. Diallo's heart quickened. His mind raced back to his days in the human army, moving from village to village, fighting, surviving. Like any soldier, he had sought comfort in the arms of women. And your mother's name? Diallo asked, his voice steady but his pulse quickening. What was it? Kwame looked up, his eyes meeting Diallo's for the first time. There was a flicker of something. Anger, suspicion, pain. Why do you care? He asked, his voice sharp. Diallo didn't flinch. Just curious, he said again, but his tone had shifted. There was a weight to his words now, a seriousness that couldn't be ignored. Kwame stared at him for a long moment, then finally said, "Her name was Adama," his voice quiet but firm. Diallo inhaled sharply. A name from his past, one he had not heard in many years. He studied Kwame closely now, taking in the sharp angles of his face, the way his brow furrowed, the depth of his dark eyes. There was something familiar there, something Diallo had never thought to see again. Adama, Diallo repeated almost to himself. He had known an Adama once, long ago, in a village that no longer existed. She had been fierce and kind, with eyes that held storms and laughter all at once. They had shared a brief moment in time, stolen away from the chaos of war. Kwame noticed the change in Diallo's expression. "You knew her?" he asked, though his voice was wary, guarded. Diallo exhaled and nodded. "Yes," he admitted. "A long time ago." Silence stretched between them, heavy and uncertain. Kwame studied him carefully. "Then tell me, Hunter, are you the reason I never knew my father?" Diallo's heart pounded in his chest. He had faced countless battles, stood against enemies with swords and fire. Yet this moment, this question, felt more dangerous than any war he had ever fought. "I don't know," Diallo answered honestly, "but if I am, then we have much to speak about." Suddenly, a deep, resonant horn echoed through the village, cutting through the tension like a blade. The sound was ancient, powerful, and filled with an urgency that made the air itself seem to tremble. Diallo and Kwame both turned sharply toward the source of the noise. "The Forest Guardian," Kwame said, his voice low. "She's here to name her price and restore the balance we've disrupted." Diallo nodded. "We better join the others," he said, his voice firm. He was grateful for the distraction, for the chance to step away from the heavy revelation hanging between them. Kwame didn't move at first. His eyes stayed locked on Diallo, searching, questioning. If what he suspected was true, then everything Kwame thought he knew about the Hunters, about his own past, was a lie. The Hunters had more secrets than he had ever imagined, and he was determined to uncover them piece by piece. But now wasn't the time. The horn sounded again, louder this time, and the village erupted into motion. Snake people emerged from their cabins, their faces solemn as they moved toward the center of the village. Kwame finally tore his gaze away from Diallo and followed, his mind racing. As they reached the gathering, the crowd parted to reveal the Forest Guardian. She was unlike anything Diallo had ever seen. Tall and imposing, her skin seemed to shimmer with the colors of the forest, greens, browns, and golds that shifted like sunlight through leaves. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and her presence was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The Guardian raised her hand and the crowd fell silent. "The balance of the forest has been broken," she said, her voice echoing like the wind through the trees. "The snake people have taken too much, and the land cries out for restoration. I am here to name my price." Amina stepped forward, her head bowed in respect. "We are ready to hear your terms, Guardian," she said, her voice steady, but her hands trembling slightly. As the snake people waited to hear the cost of their disturbance, Kwame looked at Diallo. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something much bigger than himself. The secrets of the Hunters, the truth about his past, the fate of the forest, it was all coming together and he was ready to face it no matter the cost. And that, my dear tribe members, brings us to the close of another gripping episode in our Snake vs. Hunter series. Cabo the Great and Naomi continue their mesmerizing dance of seduction, their motives as tangled as their desires. Meanwhile, the snake people have fortified their castle and city, awaiting responses from their kin across distant lands. Will they rally together for the impending battle? Deep within the savannah, Sia and his team press forward with their mission to disrupt the movements of the snake people and hinder them from reaching Snake Island. Tendai, however, fights a different battle, the one within his heart. Will he finally muster the courage to confess his feelings to Malaika? Will love triumph over hesitation? And then there's Kwame, who confronts Diallo in a conversation heavy with unspoken truths. The possibility of a paternal bond lingers in the air, threatening to disrupt the fragile balance. Will Diallo acknowledge Kwame as his son, risking the safety of the snake people among the hunters? Or will he choose denial, burying the truth to protect them all? The answers lie ahead, tribe. Until next time, stay vigilant. The story is far from over. Want to support the channel and become an even bigger part of our tribe? You can join for as little as the cost of a coffee each month. Your support helps me continue creating the content you love, but of course, just having you here is already more than enough. Thank you for being part of this journey. A warm and heartfelt thank you to all the amazing tribe members who have chosen to join and support this incredible journey. Your belief in this channel means the world to me, and I'm so glad to have you along for the ride. And as always, thank you for watching our story, and we hope you enjoyed it. What lessons did you draw from this story? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of the tribe. Thank you for watching The Tales of the Savannah. We will see you next time in the Savannah.